And we are live. What's up, guys? And I am back. Been gone for a while. Was at DEF CON for a week, then took a vacation with my fiance for a week, and then actually I'll be gone next week for Singapore. So I won't be doing much of these. But in the immediate time, I got my buddy, Brad Mills, once again. Quick little bio on who Brad is. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's been in many different businesses, got the Bitcoin bug a couple of years ago. And ever since, he's been specializing in a bunch of different trading systems and really diving deep into the whole world of crypto. We've had many different podcasts in the past. If you missed that, last one we did was Bad ICOs, which was a really good one. That one is actually shared a bunch of times. I think the one before, what did we do? I forget. Anyways, that one's good too. So in this one, we're actually talking about the whole dilemma in the last week or so with Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash. What is it? What's happening? People are confused. So let's talk about this. Brad, give us the 411.
Okay, the 411. So do you want this as the libertarian Bitcoin maximalist or the objective cryptocurrency analyst?
Bro, let's do a little bit of both. Let's play devil's advocate.
All right, well, devil's advocate. I got some Bitcoin Cash. Everybody got some Bitcoin Cash if you had Bitcoin. I'm probably going to hold on to it forever, like most of my cryptocurrency positions. Bitcoin Cash is trying to fulfill this need of the Joseph. Who's that? I can't remember his last name, but he had a nice article recently. It was comparing like the Keynesians to the Austrian economics.
Jimmy Song.
Jimmy Song, yeah.
Yeah.
So like that makes a lot of sense where the big block version of Bitcoin is trying to fulfill that transaction velocity need where you put all these microtransactions on a blockchain and that increases the value. And that's what makes, that transaction load gives it the value. So, I mean, yeah, that makes sense. If you're a Keynesian, a crypto Keynesian or a Keynesian economist, then yeah, you'll probably see the value in having unlimited block size and gigablocks and having like all of the nodes be centralized in 3 or 4 big companies isn't a big deal to you because you're more of a sort of like an evolutionary profit-driven technologist rather than somebody who's trying to guard against centralization and promote decentralization and promote sovereign money and secure, protected wealth, like which I think Bitcoin, like actual Bitcoin, is, right? And I struggle a lot with this, man. I get triggered so easy by people talking about Bitcoin Cash as Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Because I got in really in the early days in 2011, and I came from the libertarian viewpoint and had watched these movies talking to me about the central banking scams and fractional reserve banking, and I came in from that, like just trying to get Ron Paul elected, and saw Bitcoin as the solution to central banks and debt enslavement, and that's what really drew me, the secure store of wealth, right? The decentralization. Nobody's going to be able to censor transactions final. You can protect your own wealth. It's a deflationary model. It's not about spending microtransactions. It's more about protecting your wealth. And that's not what Bitcoin isn't saying. We're not going to ever be something that you can do microtransactions with or have Visa level transactions per second. It's just going to take some time because they want to do it in a certain way with like a safer upgrade path. So the Bitcoin Cash people, though, to play devil's advocate, they've been trying to do this for a couple of years, and they're not getting anywhere. And Bitcoin Core team has this certain permissioned upgrade process, right, where you got to submit a BIP, a Bitcoin Improvement Protocol or proposal, and if the community doesn't support the BIP, then you don't get in, right?
Yeah.
So in one way, it does. The Bitcoin Core process does like go against that permissionless thing that everybody signed up for at the beginning, because you kind of got to have permission to put your upgrades in. But I mean, that's free open source development. That's how it works. So there's a lot of devil's advocate. You can play on both sides with this. It's a tough one for me to reconcile because like
I think whatever, if we distill it, most people are just upset with the brand steal as opposed to the actual what they're doing. Because in laissez-faire capitalism, man, that's the whole point. I can do whatever I want.
Right, and that's what I was going to say too. Like if you zoom back, right, just we've got fiat money and cryptocurrency, right? The people on the fiat side, like Jamie Dimon and all these guys are saying, what is Bitcoin? It doesn't make any sense. There's no value. It's not backed by anything, right? So then you zoom in, and when we tell them, well, value is what you ascribe to it. Value is what we decide, right? There's no intrinsic value behind dollars. There's no intrinsic real value behind gold. It's just what people accept for medium exchange and store value. So if we're going to use that explanation to describe how Bitcoin can hold value, then we kind of have to accept that for Bitcoin Cash too. Because initially when they're forked away and it's like $20 billion market cap now, I'm like the old, like the fiat guys. I'm like, what gives that Bitcoin Cash any value? That thing is nothing. It just forked from Bitcoin. It's not worth anything. And I'm realizing, well, that's kind of the same argument that people from the outside world are telling me about Bitcoin. So I got a lot of cognitive dissonance rolling around here when talking about Bitcoin Cash. So it's a tough one. I'm trying to like play devil's advocate and see it from both sides, but you're right. It's the most thing that people are finding most offensive and triggers everybody that having a Bitcoin for so long is the attempted like brand theft of saying Bitcoin Cash is Bitcoin. And then it could be just semantics, though. It could be just Roger Ver just playing philosopher and saying, well, Bitcoin Cash is Bitcoin, like philosophically. But I think he's actually trying to like make Bitcoin Cash Bitcoin.
The funny thing, though, about this whole debate, especially if they're talking about hash rate and the longest chain, is sometimes they feel like the miners are indebted to the network, like they have to like obey us. At the end of the day, I'm a miner. I'm for profit. And you can't tell me what the fuck I can mine. If I want to take, if I'm, for example, 30% of the hash power of Bitcoin, if I want to just leave tomorrow and mine Monero or mine Bitcoin Cash, so be it. I'm following profit. And that's why I find it funny with the debate when people are saying, oh, they stole hash power. What do you mean steal? What, you own the fucking miners? What are you talking about?
See, I agree with you on that point too. It's like it's capitalism. It's a free market, right? But on the other hand, it's kind of a scam because Bitmain is the one that has most of that hash power, and Bitmain is the one that owns most of the majority of the Bitcoin Cash. Like they've been buying up Bitcoin Cash and using their hash power to support Bitcoin Cash. Now, I don't mean they own most of Bitcoin Cash, like 50% of it or something. I just mean like obviously the people that forked Bitcoin Cash, like Roger Ver and Calvin Ayre and Craig Wright and all these guys, like
McAfee,
but.
Yeah.
He says he doesn't own any Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, Ethereum, anything. He says he doesn't own anything. He's just making profits. He just owns dollars. That's what he's saying. But I don't know.
Sure. Whatever he says, sure.
But yeah, like the thing about like that gives Bitcoin up until now, that has given Bitcoin its value, is that there's a sunk cost in the electricity and the equipment that you're using to solve the proof of work, right? So you've got this invested cost, so you're not incentivized to attack the network because you'd be like hurting your own value, right?
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think both can coexist?
I think both could coexist, but it's going to be really hard because that value, like, I mean, it's the same algorithm, so it's the same mining equipment.
Except, well, kind of. The only difference Bitcoin Cash has, or what's a big difference, is they have EDA, emergency difficulty adjustment.
That's just the adjustment on the difficulty. It's the same like security algorithm, right? It's the same like ASIC machines that can mine both chains. So, like, technically, there should only be one winner because that value of burnt electricity and like sunk costs of equipment and research and everything, that shouldn't be able, you shouldn't be able to just clone that infinitely.
Well, Litecoin's the same thing. Any research that Bitcoin Core does automatically gets applied to Litecoin.
Yeah, but that's just technical research. That's not like physical hardware and electricity and stuff. Like there's different machines that mine Litecoin. There's like that's why there's usually only one cryptocurrency that has, and this is what I hold for my portfolio. I look at like the top positions for my portfolio, they don't really have an algorithm that overlaps or any sort of like anything that's like a unique or a similar technology. Like
there's nothing else that runs SHA-256.
There is like Namecoin,
Yeah.
And the funny thing that happened with Namecoin was over the weekend when the miners were like jumping from Bitcoin to Bitcoin Cash, Namecoin couldn't exist because nobody was mining it. Everybody chose to mine Bitcoin. So what they had to do was implement merge mining in order to stay alive. And which means you can mine both at the same time. Anything that has merge mining enabled is like exactly sure how that works. I just know we used to merge mine different cryptocurrencies together with Bitcoin and other coins. But
let me ask you this: are they planning on? I haven't looked at the roadmap for Bitcoin Core or even Bitcoin Cash. I don't even know if Bitcoin Cash has a roadmap yet. But are they planning on actually moving consensus models or upgrading it for the fact that like only people with ASICs, people that can actually afford the hardwares, afford the electricity costs to do this?
No, so that's the whole thing that is driving Bitcoin Cash is the profit motive. Like if you follow Craig Wright's, and for those who don't know, Craig Wright is the guy that claimed to be Satoshi Nakamoto.
The real Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yeah, he claimed to be Satoshi, and he got all this like articles and press and became this celebrity a little bit in the crypto space. And then he decided at the very last minute to pull the rug from everybody and say, "Oh, I can't do it. I don't want to prove it." And he fooled the lead developer at the time, Gavin Andresen, the lead Bitcoin developer, into thinking that he was Satoshi Nakamoto. So it was this big thing. It was this clever like marketing scheme. Either he is or he isn't, right? And Vitalik had a really good response to that question: is Craig Wright Satoshi Nakamoto? I think it was a signal theory. He was talking about how, you know, the easiest way to tell if something is or isn't is if there's proof. And since he has no proof, he's not Satoshi Nakamoto. That's the simplest answer. So that's like Craig Wright is my connection okay, by the way? It's kind of looks a little iffy.
It's fine on our end. It's not 100%, but it's okay.
So Craig Wright is kind of like one of the leaders of this Bitcoin Cash movement, and he's one of the guys of nChain, and nChain funds research and development into large blocks, gigablocks. He funds like a Bitcoin Unlimited, and he's pushing Bitcoin Cash. He's anti-SegWit. So he actually has this vision of data centers, you know, like we have right now, but even on a bigger, grander scale, processing and making profits from processing Bitcoin transactions. So he wants it to continue on like this. He doesn't want to change the algorithm or make it easier for like poor people to get Bitcoin or anything.
Well, that's one argument that I actually stand behind for people who love Bitcoin, who've viewed it for their libertarian principles, who viewed it for economic freedom, is the people that it's supposed to help. They can't financially afford to use it at the moment.
Yeah, I see that argument too. And like, that's something that I do struggle with, because I got into Bitcoin in 2011, not just for the like secure your wealth thing, but also wanted to have this easy way for money to move, right? Like I wanted it to be PayPal, but owned by the people, right? And right now it's not able to facilitate that need because we need to get everybody using SegWit, and we need to, you know, implement Schnorr signatures and Lightning Network, and there's like a year and a half, 2 years of scaling required before we're going to be able to get to that level.
Easy, so, minimum 2 years, minimum.
Yeah. But Bitcoin Cash is trying to say like, well, we've had enough of the waiting. We're just gonna fork off, and this is now Bitcoin, and let's put gambling on the blockchain. Like honestly, the biggest reason why they're doing this is, I believe, because Calvin Ayre is the owner of Bodog Poker, and he funded.
Oh, he is. I never knew that.
Yeah, he's the owner of Bodog, and he was like, whether you agree with it or not, he was like sought after by the U.S. authorities, and he had to leave Canada. I don't know the full extent of this, but it's kind of like a Kim.com thing where he was just harassed by these authorities. I don't know if he's a felon or what it is, but
no, if it's in gambling, it probably has to do with taxation.
It's like he provided illegal gambling to U.S. citizens, even though he's Canadian. The company's Canadian, and then he was persecuted for that, right? So he funded the patent sort of strategy of nChain to get all these blockchain patents, and he's best friends with Craig Wright, the fake Satoshi Nakamoto, and their big plan for a long time has been to put unlimited block size in Bitcoin so that they could do things like gambling on a blockchain, which they could not. You know, if gambling's on a blockchain, they can't shut it down. It's beyond the reach of censorship and regulation, right?
But why on the root blockchain? Like having all these mass applications on a root blockchain is a stupid move as well. Like what about state channels or like second layer infrastructures that don't actually have to correspond with the root channel always? The whole idea of like having your whole platform on a big block, that doesn't even solve it. The block's gonna get filled regardless.
Yeah, like Andreas Antonopoulos says that if if you give somebody a gigablock, they'll fill it with whatever.
They'll fill it. That doesn't solve it.
It's not. There's never going to be a happy solution to this. At some point, fees are going to go sky high. Because,
solution is Lightning Network state channels.
Yeah, like side chains, Lightning Network. But then if you listen to Dollar Vigilante, Jeff Berwick just came out this weekend and started jumping on the Bitcoin Cash bandwagon, saying like, "Oh, it's funded by the globalists and the Blockstream is owned by the Bilderberg Group and they just want to like centralize the settlement layers and." You know, saying all this like conspiracy theory nonsense that doesn't have anything technically to do with why he feels Bitcoin Cash is better than Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
So like, if you're like one of those people and you feel that the banks have interests in these companies like Blockstream, and Blockstream is trying to fund these side channels and like trying to put transactions off the main blockchain, then I guess there's some kind of like conspiracy sort of line you can follow there that gets you to some
I think the big test will be, for example, right now you have Bitcoin, and for the most part, even the reason why I have Bitcoin, I view it as a hedge, digital gold.
Right.
You know, it cost me $3 to send a couple of bucks, so it's infeasible for me to use it as a payment layer for anything.
Right.
The other day, I know it's been spam networked by whoever it was. You know, some people say Jihan, but there's over 100,000 transactions in the mempool waiting to be confirmed. Yeah. So it's ridiculous for me to even send
$700 million at one point on the weekend was
$700 million was locked up and waiting to be confirmed.
Yeah.
So for me, I just use it as a hedge. I don't need to move it. I buy it. I don't care how long it takes for me to buy it. I'm just sitting back and relaxing. So for me, that's how I view it currently as a second. The big test for both of these ecosystems is use case. Like speculation can only take you so far, right? There's a time limit for speculation. So Bitcoin Cash can't be a hedge. Both parties can't be in hedge. So until I see what Bitcoin Cash can really, besides the technology itself, do they actually have use case utility where I actually see user base on a daily basis using this for a specific purpose? That's going to be an interesting use case for both ecosystems to prove itself in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and so if you like, that's the devil's advocate side of me. Like, I kind of would like to see this experiment play out. I'd like to see Bodog Poker put on Bitcoin Cash blockchain. I'd like to see Kim.com. Well, actually, I would have preferred Kim.com launch BitCash with Bitcoin, but now he's announcing on Twitter he's going to use Bitcoin Cash. So I'd like to see it, though. I'd like to see all these microtransaction use cases and see what happens if this Keynesian style, like, velocity of money and like massive amount of transactions actually increases the value, or if this Austrian school of sound money and increasing the value of your savings rather than having an easier, well, not even an easier, a decentralized way to do small payments. Like Adam Back is CEO of Blockstream. He has a good theory on all this where you gotta have some kind of distinction between your use case for money, right? Like you just said, like I don't get the reason to really need a decentralized PayPal. You know what I mean? Like the banks are gonna outcompete a blockchain for low fees. And
of course, and better customer support, better customer service.
Right. So, like the big distinction that you have with Bitcoin is that it's censorship free, it's decentralized, it's going to hold value, and it's like you can't just bang down the door of one large miner if you're a government and start changing Bitcoin transactions or whatever. Like that's the idea that a lot of us got into Bitcoin for, was you can protect your money. It's safe. It's decentralized. It's away from, you know, the risk of getting confiscated if say they want to start confiscating everybody's Bitcoin or whatever. They just can't do it. But with Bitcoin Cash, if it goes the way that they're saying it's going to go, gigablocks, like that's going to be an enormous burden on a node to run that. You're going to need like an insane amount of hard drive space and bandwidth. And when you start getting up into these like 100 megablock size blocks or even 10 megabyte size blocks, like they've got 8 megabytes now, but they're never over 1 megabyte because nobody's using it right now. But when Bitcoin Cash has 100 megabyte in the blocks, it's going to be pretty much a centralized server company that's processing all these transactions. You're not going to be able to run a full node.
My question though too for Bitcoin Cash is, where's your dev team? How many people do they have working on the code?
So they say that there's 5 teams. Like I've seen Roger Ver present this slide where it says, all the comparison between Bitcoin and Bcash, and it's like, Bitcoin Cash. Trying not to be derogatory here. And he says there's 5 dev teams. Craig Wright says there's 5 dev teams. So I looked at that, and I think the 5 dev teams are the one developer that works on Bitcoin Cash, right? I can't remember his name, but he's the one guy. And then Bitcoin XT and Bitcoin Unlimited, which is also, I'm pretty sure, just Peter, can't remember his last name. It's just mainly one guy, unless I'm wrong, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong on that, but I only ever see him talking about it. Parity. So they're developing on Bitcoin Cash for some reason. Parity's whatever, like Parity wallet. It's the Ethereum wallet that keeps getting hacked and losing all their money. And
actually, Roger Ver was at the conference in Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the 5th one is, but he says they say that there's 5 teams, and I don't know. Nchain is the next one. That's Craig Wright's company.
Well, I think Bitcoin also has something interesting happening. I'm kind of excited. We'll see how that rolls out, but I want to see how Rootstock plays out for the second layer multi-chain.
Yeah, and the funny thing too is that the Bitcoin Cash people are saying that they're not opposed to the second layer solutions. They're going to maybe add something like SegWit and something like Lightning Network or Lightning Network itself or Rootstock. So they're going to, the reason why SegWit was so important was because it was a way to allow Rootstock, like smart contract like transactions, to happen on the Bitcoin blockchain. It solved the problem of malleability.
Yep.
So, and there's other probably more elegant solutions, but they require a hard fork, and everybody wanted to avoid a hard fork. So segregated witness was the safest and best way to allow these smart contract like transactions to happen on the Bitcoin blockchain with like a backwards compatible format that wouldn't require somebody who had like a 2012 wallet to do something. They wouldn't have to split their coins or whatever. They would just instantly connect to the main chain. So the whole thing about SegWit, there's this propaganda campaign going on with Bitcoin Cash people saying that it's Bitcoin SegWit. It's not really Satoshi's vision. Like Satoshi was some kind of like god or something like that.
I know, it's almost like this whole like Messiah complex, or like
it's a personality.
It's like, give me a break. Things evolve. Like fuck.
Yeah, it's like it's one guy or one woman or like a group of men and women or like a group of people or even the NSA, whatever it was. It was like they used the white paper, the Bitcoin white paper, and Satoshi's vision as if it's some kind of like religious cult, which is really creepy. And I noticed a lot of new people are getting so confused by Bitcoin Cash because a lot of the personalities are so like magnanimous and like entertaining to watch, and like you got John McAfee and you got like Roger Ver, who's like viciously crying about like things on his interviews, is very passionate when he speaks. And then you got Craig Wright, who pretends to be Satoshi Nakamoto, and he's a really smart guy. He's got like 7 PhDs, and like he's constantly tweeting nonstop and gathering a lot of followers. And then you get like Calvin Ayre, who's kind of in the background, but when he posts, it's like him on a boat with like 8 women, and like it's this personality cult everybody's getting sucked into, all these new people. And like we saw on the weekend what happened, like people buy in Bitcoin Cash at the top at like $2,500 and then just instantly lose 50% of their savings or whatever, they're
I think it also depends on how you view this space and how you enter in the space. Like let's say you're entering the space to make a profit. Well, it's no different than any asset class. You need to allocate your assets and move them around. So you view everything in a neutral. Like there's a great saying, what's it saying? A smart person sees red or green. And what is it? A dumb person sees. Oh fuck! How does it go?
I mean,
A dumb
Google it.
person sees color. A wise person is colorblind, right? So there's like the whole idea is non-judgmental, non-biased cognitive biases based on like your own fundamental emotional behaviors or your own like say ideological views. So if someone's coming into this ecosystem purely for profit, then it really doesn't matter if it's Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash fork, or whatever.
Yeah, you're right.
It's just allocating every single month or whatever week, day to day, whatever strategy you have, you allocate to just make profit, period.
And I struggle with that too, like because I'm up a lot in dollar terms this year. I'm like 40,000% up, right? And
yeah,
yeah, I guess. Woo. I mean, like, I never got into this really to like make that kind of money. It wasn't that wasn't the reason why I got interested in Bitcoin and why like I got so passionate about Bitcoin. I get passionate about Pokemon Go. Like I get passionate about any new technology or fun thing or like interesting thing. And it's not always about making money. It just so happens that this is the one thing where you can be an early adopter of this technology and you can actually like your savings and your wealth can increase from adopting it too. So people get extremely passionate about this versus other things because their wealth is on the line as well.
Of course it is, man. Totally. No different than, no different than stocks. When people go talk about stocks, but people talk about anything where they have a financial incentives and financial risk and rewards.
I feel like this feels, it harkens back to last fall when it was like the Hillary versus Trump.
Yes.
Like when you're talking about Bitcoin Cash versus Bitcoin, it's even worse than Ethereum versus Bitcoin was. Like people were getting salty that Ethereum was rising.
Of course, because at least in that aspect, is two different. One is two different brand names.
And
two different technologies completely.
Yeah. Totally different use cases, right? But it's like this one is sort of like shattering the fragment of reality for Bitcoiners. If they're trying to say that it's Bitcoin, and if they win, and if they can confuse the hell out of people and actually like make people think it's Bitcoin, and because they own Bitcoin.com, BTC.com, it's Bitmain, like the main ASIC manufacturer. They only take Bitcoin Cash now. It's like all these celebrities that Roger Ver influences now are starting to, they're just not that technical. They're not in the space that deep, but he's made them a lot of money owning Bitcoin. Roger Ver goes on podcasts now and like sells the listeners on the gains that you could have made in Bitcoin and the gains that they've made in Bitcoin. And then when people ask how do you buy Bitcoin, he says go to Bitcoin.com, get the real Bitcoin Cash. Yeah. It's just a very scammy, like underhanded, slimy way to do this.
But bro, that's marketing for you. No different than any other companies doing their things.
I try not, like, I know I got a lot of friends that are friends with Roger Ver, so I try my best not to like. I've never met the guy in person. I've seen him at conferences and stuff. I'm sure I'll meet him one day, but I mean, I try to put myself in his shoes. Like, he's incredibly wealthy at this point.
He's also probably a fundamentalist.
He's not doing this for money. Like, he's probably at least a billionaire, if not a multi-billionaire, because of all the Bitcoin he owns. He invested in Zcash really early on. Ethereum, Monero, like, he's invested in a lot of these currencies. He's invested in all the big startups, like, he's not doing this for money, I don't think. I think it's like you said, fundamentalism. It's a philosophical viewpoint.
Which I'm totally fine with. Like, at the end of the day, let the best party win. Like, okay, it's fine. It's a free market. You got this camp, that camp. Let's go. Let's see who does it the best.
Yeah, I think I agree with that as well. There's the logic there. Like, this is capitalism. This is free market. This is not like you can just shut down Bitcoin Cash because it makes me feel icky. But the way that they're going about confusing everybody into thinking it's actually Bitcoin and like rewriting history, saying that like SegWit actually forked off the Bitcoin chain and now Bitcoin Cash is the true Bitcoin. Like, that's just technically wrong.
Yeah.
And it's confusing people. It's a purposeful like propaganda campaign. He's become like the Rupert Murdoch of Bitcoin. He owns all these massive media
But I think also one of the X factor is once institutional money comes in, the question is where they go. Like, if I'm an institutional investor,
they're going to Bitcoin. They're not going to Bitcoin Cash. See, the celebrities and the influencers and stuff like that, like Jeff Berwick, Dollar Vigilante, all these podcast guys, like I'm starting to hear them talk about Bitcoin Cash because they know Roger, and Roger's kind of made them money, right? But sovereign wealth funds and like endowment funds and like university funds and stuff, like they're going into Bitcoin. They're not going to Bitcoin Cash because Bitcoin,
especially once like an ETF is approved anywhere, like a legitimate ETF in North America, and they have direct access from the brokerage with one click on the website, it's going to Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's going to Bitcoin, and that doesn't mean that Bitcoin Cash is not going to $10,000 too. It just means that the smart money right now, like the old money, I guess we'll say, is like going to move into an asset class that is more sensible and like established, and isn't, you know, it's more logical to go into Bitcoin than it is to go into any altcoin. Because the liquidity's there. Bitcoin is Bitcoin, and like everybody accepts Bitcoin in terms of actually being Bitcoin. So they can confuse new users, and they can get the celebrities and influencers in and stuff, and have this grassroots sort of movement to sort of like try to spur this like feeling of like, look, this is where Bitcoin was 4 years ago. You can get in now while it's cheap. It's what I feel like everybody that's getting into it for is doing.
Yeah.
You know, like they missed Bitcoin. They don't want to buy it at 7,000. So they're like, oh, I can get Bitcoin at 1,200. Hell yeah, I'll get, this is Bitcoin. Bitcoin Cash is Bitcoin. It only cost me $1,200. This is Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Everybody's getting suckered in. Rather than just them trying to be honest and say like, this is a version of Bitcoin that we forked away from, and we want to try this new vision of larger blocks and putting Bodog on the blockchain and putting all these microtransactions on a blockchain. And yes, the servers will be centralized, but you know, that's not what our use case is. We're not Bitcoin, we're Bitcoin Cash. If they did that, it wouldn't be as bad, and people would probably accept it more. And I wouldn't feel bad about holding my Bitcoin Cash at that point, because I do want to see that experiment work out. But
I think at the end of the day, it's going to be exciting. I think one of the issues on both ends, and even Bitcoin Core was talking about this, is lack of actual developers in the space for both parties. There's not enough people learning C++, even starting, and we're actually working on bringing out a full curriculum for Bitcoin developers on BlockGeeks. Might be rolling in February. Yeah, top to bottom, like learning C++, the whole architectural, everything, the whole 9 yards. Super excited about that.
How do you guys see the demand? Like, there must be a massive demand for.
Yeah, we get pitched a lot for Bitcoin developers. So we've accepted the challenge, and we have one of our in-house blockchain engineers building out the curriculum right now.
It must be a really good field for new, like, young coders to sort of choose. Like, do I want to be like a Bitcoin developer, an Ethereum Solidity developer? Do I want to be like an artificial intelligence, deep learning, machine learning guy? Like, there's so many options.
I think if you get into the blockchain space, it's wise that you learn them all.
Yeah.
It gives you a lot of insight to how other platforms are designed. So learning a little bit about C++ and learning the Bitcoin architectural design layers, and then learning about Ethereum and maybe learning about the other ones out there, such as even like Hyperledger, even though they don't have a crypto, and then doing like cross-pollination of the ideas and the systems that you learned really will help you out to become a good full stack.
The one thing I saw too out of this whole SegWit2x debacle that is promising is, like, I was really scared that SegWit2x was going to sort of fork Bitcoin and fragment Bitcoin. And, you know, my theory on the whole thing, what happened on the weekend, was that they were going to do this when SegWit2x happened. And what did happen was, coincidentally, when all this price action started happening on BitThumb, the zero fee exchange where you can do wash trading, coincidentally, the difficulty adjusted on both Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin. So Bitcoin Cash had the favorable difficulty, and 60% of the total hash power moved to Bitcoin Cash, which slowed down transactions, created this massive transaction backlog of 120,000 transactions stuck in the mempool on Bitcoin. And then also, like, these celebrities started coming out saying, Bitcoin Cash is Bitcoin, and like Craig Wright said, Bitcoin Cash going to $1 million, buy Bitcoin Cash. Like, they all started saying they're buying it. Roger said in an interview, and he tweeted that he sold his Bitcoin for Bitcoin Cash and Ethereum. Like, it was a pretty coordinated attack. And I mean, I think it's an attack because it was coordinated. Like, it's not an attack that it's an attack. It's an attack on.
I wouldn't say it's I would say it can be like a takeover, no different than if you and I want to corner the market. There's many case examples of cornering the market, or you and I want to corner a stock where we manipulate the stock. It's in the gray area of legal. Not in crypto world, there's no such thing. there's no regulation, right? But so it happens all the time in other markets.
Well, a lot of people's like Ryan Charles has a YouTube thing, and it's funny because if you're on that side, like the Bitcoin Cash side, you'll say it's not an attack. But it's funny because they say it's an attack, and then the next sentence it's not an attack. So it is an attack.
Yeah.
And it's a coordinated attack, and it was like, obviously it was meant to decrease the value of Bitcoin and increase the value of Bitcoin Cash and slow down the Bitcoin blockchain and highlight the problem of having these limited block size to make the bigger block size sound better. But anyway, SegWit 2x, if that was going to happen, that would have been the time that they were going to strike this, this attack where Roger sells his coins and the Bitcoin Cash guys sell their coins and then start buying Bitcoin Cash.
Mm-hmm.
But thank God it didn't happen, because if we had to deal with what was going on the weekend, plus a fragmentation of the Bitcoin community between 2 megabyte blocks and 1 megabyte blocks and all the CEOs of these big Bitcoin companies being looked at as villains, like that would have been terrible. And I think they would have done a lot more damage. But the good thing that came out of this was the SegWit 2x guys called it off. And thankfully they did, because Bitcoin would have been so much more weaker during that fork for Bitcoin Cash's attack to happen. Because what they would have done was taken the hash power, split it between both chains. Difficulty would have been like higher on Bitcoin and Bitcoin 2x than it was on Bitcoin Cash. After the fork, they would have moved all the Bitcoin, all the hash power to Bitcoin Cash, and then because the hash power would be split between SegWit 2x and Bitcoin, it would have stalled the chain. So we would have been like 3 months before a difficulty adjustment happened on Bitcoin and Bitcoin SegWit 2x, and we would have seen like 3-hour blocks, like the transaction backlog wouldn't have got cleared for months. So Bitcoin Cash would have had a much bigger position there. So thank you to all the NYA signatories for calling that shit off, because that would have been terrible if they had done this on the day of the fork.
Yeah.
And the good thing that came out of it, going back to the developer conversation, was like now we're starting to see like companies that were complaining about the Hong Kong agreement not being kept, and SegWit 2x not being adopted. They're starting to hire Bitcoin developers. So these are like some of the biggest companies in the ecosystem. Like they benefit the most from Bitcoin, and they didn't have any Bitcoin developers. So now you're seeing job postings go up for these big companies to hire Bitcoin developers. So it looks like your course is going to be just on time.
It's on time, brother. coming out soon. Cool. So I think we'll wrap it up over there. So where do you think we'll be by the end of the year for everything? What's your outtake?
End of the year?
Yeah, Christmas time.
Well, we might as well talk about the price then of Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, since we've been talking about it so much.
Yeah.
There's two things happening, that one for each that's pretty major event. There's Bitcoin is having the CME futures launch for trading in December. Or by December, so it could even happen in November, which is going to be an influx of money for Bitcoin. Wall Street, Wall Street's coming in. Mike Novogratz has been saying for a while that the herd is coming, right? Like you can hear the footsteps of the herd into Bitcoin, and Mike Novogratz got really wealthy this year. He made a lot of money on Ethereum. He placed a big bet on Ethereum. He also owns a lot of Bitcoin. And now he owns Galaxy, which is a fund that invests in cryptocurrencies. He bought $20 million worth of Bitcoin on this dip this weekend. And he knows, like, he's very plugged into the space. He knows the money's coming into Bitcoin. So when the futures trading launches, it's going to be an interesting thing. Like, we could get shorted. We could get
I think shorting is going to be big.
Yeah. Or everybody could go long to get their position to sort of like have their.
Who was it that announced the SME? They're coming in?
The CME.
CME, sorry.
LedgerX is another one that has Bitcoin derivative trading as well. I think it's derivative trading. But it's LedgerX and CME are the two big ones.
So what do you think global shorting is going to do to the actual price?
I don't know, because they've also got these like volatility stops on Bitcoin markets. So if we ever go like, I think it's 7%, we
Mm-hmm.
stop for an hour or some sort of time, and then if we go to like 14%, it stops for the day.
Mm.
So I mean, we have 14% swings in crypto like daily. So I think when Bitcoin moved up today, like a lot of the altcoins, Monero, Litecoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash, like a lot of them dropped 15%.
Mm-hmm.
Because when like that's the sort of fractal pattern right now. When Bitcoin takes off a run, everything else drops. Well, most.
Most, yeah.
So it could go either way. We could go to 10,000 by January 1st, or we could drop to say 4,500 or even lower.
Mm-hmm.
I got buys placed at 49.50. We got as low as 5,500 on the weekend. I didn't quite get my buys filled on Bitcoin, but I sold a lot of Bitcoin Cash
Mm-hmm.
around 1,600. And I'm going to buy my Bitcoin Cash back. If Bitcoin Cash goes to 500, I'm going to buy it back, because I do think that there is an interesting use case for what Roger's doing. They got a lot of money. Roger and Craig and Calvin and all these guys, like, they have a shitload of money. And they're very passionate about Bitcoin Cash. It's like a religion at this point. So they're not.
I've been
just
saying
gonna
this
give
from
up
day
on it.
one. All crypto is religion.
Yeah, it is. Like you have been calling that, right? Like everybody, you're saying that every major crypto needs like a Jesus figure, right? Like Vitalik is Ethereum's Jesus, and now, you know, shitcoin Jesus is Roger Ver is Bitcoin Cash Jesus.
Yeah.
But he is that kind of figurehead that would spur followers and like loyalty and, you know, falling in line. And Craig pretending to be Satoshi, whether he is or isn't, I'm pretty sure he isn't. Jihan, the biggest like mining ASIC manufacturer, like these guys are like a super trifecta of personality.
Mm-hmm.
So Bitcoin Cash is not going away. I think it's going to like fall back down to like maybe $500 until coin. And like I said, there's two big events happening. The next big event for Bitcoin Cash is when Coinbase releases their coins. But they still haven't released their coins.
That's right.
It's like 500,000 Bitcoin
That's
Cash
right.
to get released. Now, I think that what's going to happen with those coins is they're going to get dumped
Yep.
because people want their Bitcoin.
Oh, talking about, sorry to pause you there. Did you hear about Square yesterday?
Yeah, Square, that's pretty
They
awesome.
were gonna fucking drive a lot of new users.
Yeah. And Square is like, you know, Jack was asked, it's Jack Dorsey, right?
Jack Dorsey, yeah, same with Twitter.
Someone asked him why put Bitcoin on, right? And he said that most of his users have been begging him to be able to buy Bitcoin as an investment to hold it long, to sort of put some savings into it.
Yep.
Right? They haven't been asking to buy Bitcoin so they can spend it at Starbucks.
Nope.
Right? Like that's the Austrian economics sort of coming through there to show that the biggest use case for Bitcoin and cryptocurrency right now is a store of wealth. So we'll see how that sort of crypto Keynesianism Bitcoin Cash works. I think it will work eventually, but Bitcoin Cash is going to get, I think, suppressed back down to like $500 until Coinbase releases the coins. Because think about it. If you're this big Chinese miner and, you know, you've been made fun of and trolled by these core supporters, as you like to think, for years, and maybe you got a blank check from the Chinese government, maybe you don't. That's a little conspiratorial on my end. I think there's something there, but
I think the price is gonna bottom out. This is such an artificial price.
why would you pump Bitcoin Cash to $10,000 if there's 500,000 coins sitting on Coinbase to get these core supporters rich? Like,
Yeah.
you're gonna wait until it bought. Like you're gonna shake them out, right? BitMEX just announced they're one of the biggest exchanges. They're gonna sell their Bitcoin Cash for Bitcoin.
Mhm.
Coinbase is going to release. The users that don't like Bitcoin Cash, which is the majority of them, are going to sell the Bitcoin Cash. Probably going to be around $500, and then after that point, moon. I think that's when they're going to like do phase 3 of this big pump and put it over the price of Bitcoin. They're going to try, unless Bitcoin's at like $100,000 a coin at that time.
Mhm.
I don't think it's going to happen in the next few months, but
No, man.
I do recommend that people, even though I don't like Bitcoin Cash, the way that they're marketing and stealing users and claiming to be Bitcoin, I do recommend you hold on to it, because eventually, Roger's whole mission now is Bitcoin Cash, and
Yeah.
Bitcoin.com is like going full Bitcoin Cash.
Yeah.
So it has to pump, or else he's a laughing stock, and it's his pride, it's his personality. It's like they're all in on this. So.
Mhm.
hold your Bitcoin Cash because it's going to get pumped. I mean, or sell it now and buy it back lower, but that's not. You shouldn't do that. You should hold it.
Yeah, hodler. All right, bro. Let's wrap it up there.
What are you going to do with your Bitcoin Cash?
Bro, I'm a long-term investment holder. I don't do nothing. I don't
Hold.
move nothing. I just chill. I forget about it, and I'll see you in 10 years.
Yeah,
Or I just have you manage my money because I don't do. I don't do anything. I'm too busy building businesses.
I'll hold your cash for you.
Yeah, hold my cash. All right, man.
Cover everything. Is there anything else to talk about?
I don't know. We covered pretty much everything. I'm actually having Jimmy Song on next week. I'll talk to him more about this in technical detail. But yeah, so we covered everything, and we should have a round 3, or no, this will make round 4. Another podcast soon.
Sounds good.
All right, bro. Talk to you soon.
All right, later, man.
Yeah, peace.